Howdy, everybody. Bob Tallman for No Spin Rodeo. No politics, no BS, just hard-hitting news and rodeo commentary from two of the most trusted sources in our sport. Kendra Santos, Tommy Joe Lucia. Listen up. Here we go.
Welcome to No Spin Rodeo. Hello, No Spinners. Good to see you. Glad you joined us. If you're watching this on video on demand or if you're listening to the podcast, thank you very much for joining us. We're here on a spring afternoon. I've got my favorite two people, at least right now, Kendra Santos and Greg Teagarden with me. Kendra, where are you at this time of year?
Well, I'm in California today, and then I'll be somewhere else in a couple more days. So this time of year, I've been in 3 states, kind of revolving. That's
cool. It's cool to be moving. Mr. Teagarden, you're by a coast, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm down in Corpus Christi, Texas, getting ready to do the WCRA event down here. Looking forward to.
Fun.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful venue. Isn't that venue right on the water?
Yes, it's right on the water. The whole city is literally right on the water. And on Saturday after they do the parade, they have the Blue Angels come flying by. It's pretty impressive.
That's cool. Well, I'm in Parker County. It's been raining a lot, getting ready. A lot going on. It always seems like it's always busy, but enough of that. So welcome, everybody. This is episode 57, No Spin Rodeo. If you're listening to this and have a friend, tell them about it. If they want to learn anything real in rodeo, they'll listen to us. And we usually kick this off. I think we've got a little bit of rodeo news, and the person that delivers that to us is the one and only First Lady of Pro Rodeo Journalism, ladies and gentlemen, Kendra Santos.
Roy Cooper stole the show this week, right? I mean, that's pretty much day and night. I can't even think of a phone call or anybody that I've talked to that hasn't been what we were talking about. Today is May 6th, and so it's a Tuesday, and a week ago this evening, as most people know by now, Roy died in a house fire in Decatur, his home, and I think it's a traumatic, shocking, sudden thing for everyone to deal with, the whole rodeo family. It just, I don't know. Sometimes, when we see something coming, it's a little bit less traumatic. I just think it's been a traumatic episode for all of us. And but Roy, there's, what do you say? I feel like, well, for one thing, in November he would have been 70, and I will say that in his 69 plus years, he lived it up more than most. If there are people that I know, if they lived to be 150, they wouldn't live as much life as Roy Cooper did, right? And that is, good for him. And some people, like, when they want to call him like a progeny, is that the right word? Progeny, like a natural born, gifted. Well, there he is. There's Roy and old Whit. That was Butch Stoneman's bay horse Whit. And those two, holy smokes, that is from the 1983 NFR when Roy actually won his Triple Crown. But Butch Stoneman was really proud of that horse, and it's been really interesting. Some of the things that have come out of Roy's passing, where there are two families that Whit came from was named for Whit Kenny, which is where he originally came from. And then, but Butch Stoneman's the one who owned him and hauled him. And it's been kind of an interesting, the family histories, the family stories of who trained Whit. Those two families have different recollections, and now we're getting a couple generations past and people who aren't alive anymore. So, that's all sort of interesting. That picture is really cool right there with Roy and his triple crown, his 3 trophies. He, in 83, winning the calf roping, the steer roping, and the all around. So that hadn't been done, in 25 years since Jim Shoulders. And I want to say, was Roy not the first timed event guy to do it, maybe? And then the next timed event guy to do it, or next guy, period, to do it, was his son-in-law, Trevor Brazil. Anyway, everybody pretty much knows about, that Roy won 8 world titles, 6 in his, trademark, the calf rope, and the Super Looper was a calf roper above all. But, I look at some of the stats, like he and I spent a lot of time together. I feel like it was, over the years in general, because he always won so much and whatever. And he was a friend. And, but there were times like we spent time at Fisherman's Wharf during the Cow Palace and different things like that, talking about things. But like Roy won 25 world titles in the AJRA, as a kid. And it's like, he was the New Mexico state champion calf roper. He was the national champion calf roper in high school. He was the national intercollegiate rodeo association calf roper. That in 75, and then his rookie year, 76, he not only makes his first NFR, but he gets checks in 6 of 10 rounds, wins the NFR, wins the world as a rookie. It's like, talk about storming the rodeo world. But he lived it so large, and he enjoyed, I don't know, I said the other day that, Roy loved the spotlight and the spotlight loved him. And it's true. But I mean, I think about all these pictures or images of being somewhere in person and seeing Roy, with his dark glasses on, or smoking a cigar, or, racing at Rio Doso, racing horseback, George Strait, they were great friends. And Roy was cool. Okay. And so I think one of his great gifts, besides being the roper that it's never been the same since he showed up, is what a gift that he made all of us feel like so special. And like, if he met you today, you would feel so special. And I remember feeling that way. The first day I spent a whole day with him was at Cheyenne. And then 35 years to the day later, there we were sitting there telling old stories at Cheyenne again, but he, like, the whole way through, like, he loved people, and his heart, like Trevor was saying, he had a huge heart for kids. He really did. Like, every time I was at his place, there was little kids there. And I think, when we showed up there, Lane and Taylor and I, like, there were different times, but one time it was like in between Taylor's junior high finals in Gallup, and Lane's had his high school finals in Farmington, and we had a week layover. And I feel like the Terrios were there that time, maybe. I know that there were times we were there when, like, it's now Cheyenne McCartney, but she was Guillory then, and people like that were there. But the things that Roy did, it's like, okay, so on paper, I'm just some mom there with her kids from California, and he tells, Tyler Waters is one of the kids, young people, working there at the time, and he says, get my truck and trailer, load those 2 horses, calf horses, and take her and these 2 boys over to the Lazy. They're having a roping tonight, and that's the generosity of spirit of Roy Cooper. Like, do you know how many people would do that? You wheel in there, and it's like, well, if they're going to be at the arena all night, like, we're all out there all night, but here, take these 2 horses, take my truck and trailer. Like, that's a lot of people don't do things like that, but he did stuff like that every day for everybody. And so I don't know. There was something that I stumbled across that I'd forgotten about that I'd love to mention, because a lot of people didn't realize it at the time, and now if they did, they've forgotten it or they're gone or whatever. But in 1981, not only did Roy Cooper heel for H.P. Evans, who was the 74 champ of the world and the first, like, notorious reacher, and but H.P. Evans, it was back when 15 team ropers qualified for the finals and could invite somebody. H.P. invited Roy to heel for him at the NFR in 1981. And when it was all said and done, Roy had won the gold buckle on the calf roping, but cousin Jimmy Cooper had beat Roy for the world all-around crown by $47,
Wow.
and it's like $47, but there he was doing everything. If there's an angle, I mean, Roy's gonna show up and heel for his friend. And by the way, that is so H.P. Evans. H.P. Evans, who took his own dad to the finals twice, Hoke, and I've talked to H.P. about that recently, and it's like, well, I wouldn't have been anywhere without my dad. So he took his dad, who, was not the person you were going to go try to win the world with, probably, but it meant more to him, or to help his buddy Roy. Anyway, these are kind of things that, you have the fondest memories of things people have done for each other. And Roy did so much for so many people.
Well, so I'm not the timed event aficionado on this group, so I'm going to ask you to correct me if I'm wrong on this. But the way I understand it is Roy Cooper revolutionized calf roping in that he was a master at how he handled his slack. Now, if you're a no spinner that's not, in rodeo circles a lot, once they rope the calf, they push enough slack, right? Extra rope out there so that it handles the calf the way that they want. And there was a time when calf ropers got off on the left and went under the rope, right? And Roy was one of the guys, the way I understand it. Now, I think most of them can do it now, the good guys, but Roy could literally set his calf up any direction he wanted. This is what I understand. He was he revolutionized using his slack and how he handled the calf to expedite the tie. That has now been a trademark of the handshakes of all these people that, and Trevor and all of them, but that was really perfected by Roy Cooper. Is that correct?
Roy things, yeah, all of it's correct and so much more. Roy did things no one else had ever seen, tried, heard of. He did things, and forever, every calf roper today, every future calf roper, whether he knows it or not, will be impacted by things that Roy Cooper did. And it wasn't just his slack or whatever. You also have to remember that in Roy's prime, the calves were so much bigger than they are today. So it wasn't like, oh, these little, some people call them goats or whatever. By comparison, that is what they look like, But it was like, yes, when I'm a kid, plenty of people got off the left. Some didn't even duck off under the rope. They stayed over there and legged them because they were monsters. And when you see those old pictures, it's like, well, you kind of had to, shipwreck things a little bit to stand a chance you'd get your lunch eaten, But he did things, it's like he figured out ways, like when they talk about trailblazers and pioneers and all this, it's not like he took something from somebody before him and then, kind of tweaked it. He changed everything. And if that had to do with, I don't care if it's scoring, getting your slack, the way he tied, the way he gathered, all the things, like he gave the whole event a facelift. And when people like, Phil Lyons say, it was always all about Dean Oliver. And then once Roy showed up, it's like Roy Cooper. I mean, those guys were just like their jaws were on the ground. And that picture that Greg just showed there from Pendleton in 2010, W.T. Bruce took that picture. It's very special of Roy and his three boys, Clint, Cliff, and Tuff. That in 2010, that was this for Roy to have all three of his sons at the NFR. That was even a greater sense of pride for him as far as a Triple Crown than those trophies and gold buckles, And so, man, he has so much to be proud of. And of course, there's speculation and that and this, and he was some people's cup of tea and not others and whatever. And like I was talking to my son Taylor this morning about it, and he's like, "There's nothing anybody can say that should ever be able to tarnish one thing about his legacy, because it's just magic. And if people don't respect what Roy Cooper did with a rope, then whatever, who cares about them?"
Yeah.
So.
Well, definitely too soon. Definitely too soon. Well, we lost another icon in the sport.
Yes. So, Sunday, Kay Gay, the matriarch of the, Rafter G Rodeo, Kay Gay passed peacefully. And for me, all I could do was have my heart warmed by the idea of Neil being like, my girl, I get my girl back, and that, who knew, who was happy to see who on that day. But it feels like in Kay's case, it's one of those things where it's like, it just feels okay. Like when I get to the point where it's like, when people have had all their fun here and they can, sail away and have peace and be with, for her, to go join her Neil, it's like she had an amazing ride. And a lot of people don't realize that, Kay was a National Cowgirl Hall of Famer in her own right. And the Gay family, you can see it in person, you can see it in pictures, but the respect that the generations who have followed Neil and Kay have given to those people, that's as good as it gets for any of us, they love their family and their family loved them. That's pretty great.
And I think Kay, Neil Gay, there's not very many people probably that listen to us that knew I was raised around Neil Gay. He was a stern disciplinarian and a strong man. Strong-willed, strong character. Like he demanded respect. And I heard millions of stories on the ranch, and I think Kay was like the neutralizer. When things would get a little hot or boiling, Kay had the ability to get everybody kind of back on track and out of the heat. And it's almost like when you're sorting and everybody gets mad at each other for swinging the gate the wrong way. And I can just imagine and have been told of the times that, people on that ranch, and a lot of people have went through Neil Gay's ranch to get in this business, probably sat at her kitchen table with a cup of coffee or an ice cold tea, and she counseled them, right? And because she was the matriarch, the mother. And, there's so many mothers like that. I hope that the next generation, right, of mothers is that same way, the ones that you feel comfortable about going to, and that lead the family in a very, very subtle way. Neil Gay was a leader. There he is. There's Mr. Watt behind him. That's at the legendary Fort Worth Rodeo. But, Neil was obviously, right, type A and he ran the show. But there's so many women in people's life that have a hold of those puppet strings, right? That actually bring all of us back into check. Some of you are probably married to that woman that helps you get back in check when your emotions might get out of control or whatever. And I just feel that Kay took that special role in the whole Neil Gay, the Rafter G Ranch.
Well, and I have total respect. It's like when, people are like, oh, she's just a homemaker or whatever. Those women of that generation, when I think of like my dad's mother, my Nana Lucy, like she was tough, and she cooked for all the men that worked on the ranch. And when I read things, about people with their fond remembrances of Kay, and it was like, I couldn't wait for Thursday because that was the day that we gathered the bucking horses, and Kay brought us all in and cooked and you always felt like there was something on that table that she made just for you, which is kind of like Roy and why these people are unforgettable to us, right? And so you just help them gather, and then she's like, I made your favorite, I mean, that's pretty cool.
It's very cool. Well, God rest her soul. I do think, like you, there's a sense of peace that those two are reunited. There she is with Bob Tallman. I think that was in 2024 at the Fort Worth Stock Show. There's two icons there. Don't you know she's telling Bobby T to calm down a little bit, Bobby. Slow your roll.
Well, and you know what, Tallman, that strikes a memory for me too, because I thought of it this week. There were 2 times in life that I remember clear as a bell, and they're the only 2 times that I remember getting back after a rodeo to head home, and me asking my dad, what was that? And the 2 were 1976, when I saw Roy Cooper rope for the first time at the Cow Palace, and the other one was Lake Comanche, when that tall booted, perm in his hair, mustache buckaroo, when I was raised with like Cy Talon and straight laced, Mel Lambert or whatever, and then here's this cyclone, Bob Tallman. And so that's funny that's the picture that. But I mean, both, Tallman also revolutionized things, folks.
Absolutely.
So
broke the mold. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it happens today.
Yes.
God rest their souls, and prayers for the families of both of those iconic people in the sport, regardless of what generation you're in. Well, what's going on in what other rodeo news do you got? It's kind of just ramping up, right?
Yeah, there are a couple more things that a couple more, rodeos that I want to just make a couple mentions from. One, Guyman just concluded over the weekend, and it was fun to again see the team ropers roping those big muleys, fresh, walking fresh. Breakaway ropers also, and Bubba Buckaloo and Joseph Harrison won the team roping, and was it Aspen? I think won the breakaway. Jess Pope won the Guyman back to back on the same horse 2 years in a row on Frontier Rodeo's Breaking News. This time he was 90 and a half. And this time I did get to see the ride. He was the last ride of the rodeo. And I guess that's every announcer's dream, right? And so that was cool. And Holden Myers, Rope's son, Butch's grandson, he won the bulldogging at Guyman, and he's 3rd in the world. And, there are plenty of people. He's 25 years old now. I don't know him yet. But good for him. There are so many people that I don't know. I feel like you want a good check at Houston or something, and people are like, oh yeah, what a fluke, whatever. Who is this? Whatever. Well, here he is again. It doesn't look like he's too shocked when he does well, and so more power to him. The other rodeo mention I wanted to make is about Hermiston, Oregon, the Farm City Pro Rodeo. And I think this is so cool. In 1988, a couple of traveling partners, NFR bronc riders David Botham and Butch Knowles, started the rodeo in their little hometown area in Hermiston. And this year, they're going to double the added money, $50,000 per event. It's now a top 15 PRCA rodeo, and it's August 6th through the 9th, doubling their added money.
Wow.
That is cool as hell. And I think, good for them. This is like a sweet little community or whatever. But I love, we can't ever say enough about all the volunteers that make rodeo go. But when I see something like this, a couple of bronc riders who know, they're going to take care of cowboys because they are cowboys. And I just think it is so neat. And if both of, if we're understanding correctly that Butch and Jeff Metters will not be at the microphones at the NFR this year, that's still your understanding. That's my understanding.
I don't know that that's known, but it doesn't feel that way.
But because everybody's, knows and loves Jeff and Butch, right? But good for David Botham and Butch Knowles, for starting this little shindig. And for them, I think David is the president, or has been in recent times. If he's not still today, I think he still might be. But doubling from 25,000 per event to 50, that is cool.
That's amazing. That is, especially for Little Hermiston, Oregon. And by the way, if you want to go see a cool place and a cool venue for a rodeo, those Oregon rodeos are majestic in their own right. They really, really are. There's a lot of cool rodeo grounds, but those Oregon rodeos are some of my favorite. It's always cool. It seems like sun goes down, you better get a light jacket, right? I mean, it's just, there's a beautiful lake somewhere very close by usually. So that's cool. Congratulations. I think that's fantastic. That's a lot of money, folks. You multiply that times 9 disciplines. That's a lot of money. So I hope they make it work. I hope it continues to grow. I hope the Cowboys load up and head to the Northwest for that. So that's exciting. That's exciting. Well, that's all we've got for rodeo news. We're going to jump in. We've got a quick segment of feedback, and then we'll wrap it up for today. I would ask a question. Any of you no spinners, would you wear one of these hats? Let us know. If you would wear one of these hats, then maybe we'll get some. So Greg is our official reader of the feedback. Greg, would you lay it on us, and we'll see what we're doing today.
All right, our first feedback comes from 210. I noticed a couple of rodeos using hundredths and thousandths on their timers. Do you think that will ever happen across the PRCA and or NFR? I've been thinking they may need to because of how the guys and girls just seem to be getting faster and faster.
Who's first, me or you?
Well, I don't know, but I'll just say what I think about it. I have no issue with the barrel race when it's on an electric eye, being in the hundreds, to break ties, because there might be otherwise, 15, 17 twos or whatever it is. But I struggle, and I think I speak for the Cowboys when I say doing hundreds, thousands, just forget it. But even hundreds, when you have hand timing for, say, roping or bulldogging, I'm out. And I know sometimes people try to do it, so like, we want to break ties. But do you know the human error factor? It's like, I'm dyed in the wool, may the best man win. And I don't think we have a terrible problem with ties, such that if my very strong feeling is that if you take 3 bulldoggers and say, would you rather time in tenths and split it 3 ways, or would you rather time in hundreds and take your chances or whatever? They're going to say time it in tenths. There's enough. You already have the flag has to drop and people have to stop their stopwatch. And so doing that in hundreds, no one's convinced me yet of that being a good idea.
Well, I don't particularly agree. I just think that I understand your point of view. I don't disagree with your point of view, but I think the technology exists. I think that the right winner, if it's by 100th of a second, should win. I don't think it should be collective win by, we're going to ignore thousandths of a second because we don't think we can do it right. Here's what I predict. I predict in the future that they will, I think that there will be the technology. I mean, just imagine if the neck rope on the calf triggered the start. Now, you would still have to do the stop when they throw their hands up, but usually the start, but if it triggered it, that would eliminate some, right? If that calf, when he hit the end of that rope, that triggered the clock to start, that would be very consistent. I'm always for continuing to push the envelope as it relates to technology because I think it helps make our sport more credible. I do appreciate what you're saying in that there's a lot of gray area in there. I do get that. Now, I did reach out to some of our insiders in the PRCA and said, hey, has there ever been any discussions of changing it from a 10th in the PRCA globally or at the NFR? And the answer was no, because nobody's ever asked for it. Like, it's never come up.
But, I mean, people need to really understand, too, that the timers, who are vitally important, even though they're paid better than a Walmart greeter for the most part, they are up in the announcer stand, and they're everybody understand that, like, they start the watch when they see the flag on the barrier that's across the box, when they see that flag pop. So it's like, you know how inexact that already is? So, so there's that, there's their reaction, which they do the very best that they can, and then there's the reaction of the flagger, and then their reaction to the flagger. So you have, it's human error isn't even what I mean, because I'm not saying one single person in this mix is at fault, but you're trying to split a hair that's already split. That's my opinion.
We're going to send people to Mars, and we have the ability to do all of these amazing things. There probably is a way to do this, and I'm not advocating that we do. I mean, I concur with you, right? Unless there's technology out there that nails it, right? And if there were, I'm not saying there is, don't know that, but if it were developed, I think that the person with the 1,000th of a time that wins. And but that's neither here nor there. It's all good. It sounds like that the contestants and everything are comfortable with the way it's at, probably for all the reasons you said. Therefore, we're hearing that the PRCA has never heard anybody ask to change it, so it stays the same. On to the next one.
Okay, and before we go on to the next one, when we're talking about technology, I know in recent times we've talked a little bit about this and how I don't know if we're calling it a new secretary system or what we're calling it, but I will say that today is May 6th, and I went back just to check myself to see where Holden Myers placed at Houston, and 2 months later, you cannot see how the final placings went. I know Tucker Allen won it because I remember that, but I don't remember off the top of my head, did Holden Myers went second or third or fourth? I don't remember, and you can't go and check that. That's kind of worrisome to me.
Well, maybe we should concentrate on getting accurate results out before we worry about 1,000ths of a second. Noted. Noted. Agreed and noted. Well, if we can't even get the results out right.
There are some of these other, I'm bringing this up because of my corpus, but, there are other entities that are trying different technologies to score rodeo. So I've had discussions about the pin that you've talked about with the neck rope. So there's a bunch of different entities around trying to improve on rodeo scoring and, make ties less of a thing. But, and to your point, Kendra, the way the scoring works with the timers, it's yes, there is a factor of reaction time that's built into the scoring. It's just the nature of the way that it works. That's why there's 2 timers, and that they can make sure that if one's off a little bit, it makes sure it averages it out. So it's a system that's been built and it's working pretty good. But who knows when then someone comes up with the next great thing and makes it more accurate, and we reach the next level of rodeo.
Maybe we could just find out who placed third at Houston. All right, what's the next one?
All right, the next one is from the 580. Listening to the Hall of Fame episode, an interesting story to Google on Harley Tucker's dad. Dave Tucker was an old bank robber in the late 1980s, but I think that probably meant the 1890s.
1880. Yeah.
Robbed the bank in Joseph, Oregon, and went straight for 30 years. Later became the vice president of the same bank he robbed in Joseph. Harley and his family started Chief Joseph Day's Rodeo. Pretty sure the family is still involved with putting it on. Just thought it would be a good story to read about.
Well, if you know spinners, want to Google Harley Tucker and his dad Dave, who robbed a bank and 30 years later was the vice president of that same bank, only in the USA.
And I did look, and there is quite the documentation about all that. And for people who don't remember this or don't recognize Harley Tucker's name, he's being inducted with the class of 2025 in Colorado Springs this summer at the Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame as a stock contractor.
He's the one that passed away while flanking horse, I think, or close to, or within a short amount of time having flanked a horse. All right, what's next, Greg?
From Salinas, California, episode 56, Over the Top, Nothing Held Back, Greater Understanding of the PBR. Thank you.
Thank you, No Spinners. Yeah.
That was a pretty direct grilling of Sean Gleason, and I thought he was very, shot straight back with the answers, and so I appreciated that conversation.
I thought he felt the least corporate that I've ever seen him in anything. So I was happy with that episode. I should have bet him something of value on, we'll see how that event 36 miles or 42 miles or whatever miles south of Cheyenne does. But I thought he was great, and he answered all of our questions, and he did it in a very non-corporate fashion, which we pride ourselves here on No Spin. I thought it was a great episode. Thanks, Sean, for coming on. That's the access that we're blessed to have, is that we've got the trust of some very credible people in this industry that they'll come on and talk straight with us about stuff that's swirling around. So thanks, Salinas. I'm glad you enjoyed that PBR one. I enjoyed it also.
All right, from the 505, I heard Vold Rodeo is selling. Have you guys heard anything?
I'll start. I called Kirsten when I saw this feedback, Kirsten Vold, and she said very, as Kirsten would, without hesitation and very clearly to me, that nothing was changing in the Vold rodeo in 2025, and that she would be the first to let anybody know if it were going to change in the future. Kendra, have you heard anything about this?
No, and she would be the first. Well, good for her. She should be the first, if something changes. And people should just be speculating and the rumor mill flying as it does so often in rodeo. But Harry Vold was so special to me, and I think cool is there were two of the old timers that really stand out to me to this day, of that they were so supportive, respectful, just kind of all in with smart women, and Harry Vold and Cotton Rosser are who I'm talking about. Those two men, were born a very long time ago. But both of them, if you were a smart woman, they would put you in charge of something over a semi-smart man yesterday. and I think it was like I admired that so much. But I mean, both of those people did things for me, and they didn't care that I was a girl. They're like, you're the person who needs to do this, so you need to do this. Like and that was really pretty great, and also not just customary across the board in the cowboy way of doing things. A lot of people are like, yeah, little lady, whatever. They didn't give a shit whether you had balls or not, but they had the brass to stand up and go, she's the one. When Harry told the powers that be at the pier, say, like, she's the one you need to send to Lynn Butler's bedside when he's dying. Like, you need to send that girl. And I was brand new, but it was like those guys stood up for women before it was cool, and so thank them forever for that. But Kirsten running the Duke's branch and business, you wouldn't flinch,
Yeah.
because she's a cowboy. She can handle it. So whatever she decides, whatever the future holds or whatever, she's done her dad and her family so proud that I'm proud of her and proud to be a friend, and like, she's a boss.
Well, and I'll give you an example. So at the National Western, I live in my RV behind the barns where they load all the livestock in for all those performances. It's constant trucks coming in and out. And here's what I think is really cool, because I think Kirsten's a complete class act. That truck rolls in with her stock, and it's liable to be, 10 degrees out there and snowing or icing. And she's out there with her sorting stick almost every time. I mean, you almost don't see her stuff unload without her. And that's not the case for everybody that has stock there. So it's pretty cool. You're right. She's a cowboy, and beautiful and classy and cool and professional. And
yes, and I admire, and she'd be out there with her sorting stick and her pants tucked in her boots and whatever. And she is beautiful. And one of the things, as someone who's had, probably predominantly, cowboys as close as friends, Kirsten Bold is the kind of woman that is like, you can admire, and she's not, people who have the jealous bone or are petty or whatever, or want to knock other people down and make themselves look cooler. That is not Kirsten Bold. And that's one of the things, like, if you're really great at what you do, Kirsten's like, right, and she is her dad's daughter. Good for her. But she's awesome. So
it doesn't matter what gender you are, what color you are. If you can do it, do the job. If you're self-confident, it just doesn't, I don't get all of that, because that's never played into my anything, right? There's really dumb men, and there's really dumb women, and there's really smart women, and there's really smart men, and now they don't even know, some of them, if they're men or women.
And I wouldn't want a job if I wasn't the best person for the job. And I just feel like I promise that Kirsten feels that way. It's like, don't need any special favors. Will bust ass with the best of them, to do the very best job. That's something to be proud of. So good for Kirsten. Whatever she does, good for her.
Yeah, whatever ends up happening, if there is anything there, great for them. That's a legacy living. And I don't think there'll be any furries buying rodeo companies or anything in the future. So what's the next one?
From Dubuque, Iowa, is Tommy Joe going to come out of bullfighting retirement to work the midget bullfighting?
Someone's laughing pretty hard. This has got to be in the Three Hills Circle, because that's the Dubuque, Maquoketa, Iowa little clan that I lived with in World's Toughest Rodeo. First time I went up there with my chains from Texas to ice and snow, and they made fun of me. The first time that John Thomas, who was the head livestock guy there, took a 30-pound. Okay, so they had a VIP room for the guests. I don't know whether it was a singer or something, right? Well, there was this 30-pound cheese log, like Velveeta cheese log. And I happened to have the very first new pickup I had ever had in my life. It was a Ram single cab. Like, I'd never owned a new pickup, and it had just enough miles to get from Texas to Peoria, Illinois up there. And I am so proud of that pickup. I've got chains everywhere in case it gets dangerous, and I'm all this stuff, and they're making fun of me. And so the Rodeoans, I go out there because it's my new pickup. It's colder than heck before the bull ride, and I start my Ram, right? I just start it. So it's nice and warm and toasty when me and Old Paint and my animals, when we loaded up to head out of Peoria. Well, I get done, I walk out of the back of the building, and I walk out of the ramp, and I smell, man, it smells like a cheese factory. I'm like, man, that smell, what is that smell? It kind of smells good. And I look in the parking lot, and they had taken that 30-pound cheese log and set it on my manifold of my pickup. And by the time I got there, there was Velveeta cheese dripping out of the bottom, coming out over the hood. Those guys. Anyway, and they thought it was really funny, and I was totally torqued. So I'm pretty sure, since this come from Dubuque, Iowa, that this is probably one of the Three Hills clan of old times. And to answer your question, I might throw my hand up, and if I qualify to be a midget bullfighter, I think with those little bulls I could probably do it. However, ask Rumford, just because they're a small bull does not mean that they can't take your knees out and cost you a lot of money. So I guess I'm not. I will not break out. Oh, here we go. This is the Kendra broadcast special of small people bullfighting. I love it.
The fact that the first rodeo, the head throw back is priceless. The fact that the first rodeo for the rest of the time that I ever took my grandson to was the midget rodeo in Glen Rose, Texas. I don't even know about that. But since you mentioned Iowa, I will say the way life goes is just wild. So I went over the weekend. I went Saturday to my friend Taylor Vollen, who's the daughter of the Judge Casey Vollen, who was a bareback rider from Salinas. She married a calf roper from Arkansas named Roy Lee, and I went, and there in the wedding party was Cody Huber. Remember, Bill Huber was like this forever. He owned that. Is the Great Lakes Circuit. Like, yep. Bill Huber was just something special, and a friend. And I mean, he was just a standout and a stand-up guy and so awesome. But it was so cool. And I said, I finally get the chance to, I walked up to Cody and I'm like, I finally get the chance to thank you in person, because when my son Taylor broke down driving from Salinas, California, when it was the tour finale in the fall that year, to Maine to make a couple $100 more to make that year's NFR, and he broke down like an axle wheel caught fire or whatever. He called Cody Huber like at 4:00 in the morning, and Cody Huber answered and hooked him up with Jacob Edler's dad, who got him out of this bind, and he borrowed a stock trailer from Edler's dad, blah blah blah. But anyway, so I'm like, I finally get to thank you in person, and he introduces me to his wife Shayla, and she goes, "You don't know it, but you know who I am." And I'm like, "Do I?" And she goes, "I'm Bob Barnes' granddaughter." Isn't that awesome?
The circles are small.
And so Bob Barnes, who I remember when we did the NFR book, and Bob Barnes and Harry Vole, I gave them each a copy of the NFR, and they were the only two men who had ever had stock at every NFR, right? And she's like, and they were laughing, and they're like, yeah, it's funny how life goes, because Bill Huber, when he was the calf roping director, used to go round and round and round with the colonel over all those stuff, and he's like, that we would end up together is, what were the odds? Not, they were slim, but it is kind of funny how life goes. So anyway.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Well, yeah, do miss all the crew there at Three Hills, and the short amount of time that I lived in Iowa, which we were not welcome in Iowa. I didn't feel like we were outcasts because we didn't have any corn anywhere. But I do miss all those guys. Great crew with the Three Hills crew up there in Iowa. Miss them. And that's kind of it. Any final thoughts from anybody on the team?
I just wanted to remind everybody to text us at 817-668-2395 or email your feedback to nospinfeedback@gmail.com. We love it. Keep it coming.
I'm just going to say happy Mother's Day week to all the rodeo moms out there. Yep. It's the greatest gig in the world, but happy Mother's Day. And I last night I was working to update every Mother's Day. I put out like a special Mother's Day wish to rodeo moms, who've lost a child, and it is so painful how long that list is. And to add Dylan Grant's mom and Ace Ashford's mom, and some of these, it's just, man, one is too many, and I just can't believe, and these are just the people who I know. And someone just sent me a book, and another one I thought I added last night is Vicki Blount, and Patrick Blount who I don't know personally, but he sent me a book called Tears for Ink, and I read a chapter the last two nights right before, when I got in bed, and about their 17-year-old saddle bronc rider son Tyler, who was killed 20 plus years ago. And it's like, man, I just added Callie Wright, little Levi died since last Mother's Day. And what can we say? That, that's the most horrific, heart-busting thing. And yet, how do we not stop? To a person, they've all said to me, I just don't want anybody to ever forget my son or my daughter, So.
Moms are amazing, and when we lose people out of order, it makes it that much harder. But what strong women to even be vertical. That's what I'm saying. Like to even move forward. But I guess in life there's no options. But anyway, shout out, happy Mother's Day, live in the moment, look around, nothing's guaranteed, except that we will more than likely be on in 1 week with the next episode of No Spin Rodeo. Thank you, Ms. Santos. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. This has been episode 57 of No Spin Rodeo. If you want a cap, let us know. We'll order some. If not, we'll see you in a week.